It's called the Brenizer Method, and today you're going to learn how to do it. Hello everyone, I'm Melissa New and welcome to this week's episode of Framed. This photographer has shot everyone from Muhammad Ali to the Pope, and now he shoots weddings. Why? Because it's all about the good story. Let's do this. Ryan Brenizer, how are you?
I'm doing great. Nice to be here in Boise before it hits 105 degrees.
I know. Long trip from New York, but we're so pumped that you're here. Seriously.
Yeah. I took the nationwide tour to get here. It was,
To
it
get
was
here.
fun. Yeah.
Well, I want to just start with the conversation. First, when we first contacted you, you were very cool in your email conversation of saying, "I have no secrets." I mean, tell us about that in an industry of secrets.
Right. I think the industry in a lot of ways is opening up in general. I think it's sort of forced to be by going from just a bunch of people only putting ads in the yellow pages to, now we're all putting our lives out there in blogs and things like that. But I mean, for me, in the end, I think if your business is based on secrets, your business is based on, I've got this formula, I've got this processing, I've got this thing that I do, and I just don't want anyone to find out that, because that's what makes all my business, then you're kind of vulnerable, right? Mm-hmm. For me, if I come up with something and then, at 2 p.m. and then by 3 p.m. I'm willing to share it with anyone, that forces me to keep, first of all, to keep being innovative, to keep trying new things, to keep evolving as an artist and not be stagnant. But I mean, really, as a business person, if the heart of your business is just based on working harder than the next guy, working for your clients every day and not ever letting up, like, then you're in a good position.
Sure.
And so being open, not only is it something that's naturally feels right to me. I was raised by teachers, and
Cool.
I come from sort of the Von Trapp family of teachers. Like, everyone in my family is an educator. But it also thinks that if I can do that and then have a good business, then it's something that feels like it's going to be stable and long term.
I love it. I love that you're going to educate us today.
I will do my best. Yeah. So for this, we're gonna start. Let's start really nice and easy and open. So I'm gonna have you guys standing exactly where I am. Again, this is the first stage of the mirroring. Is the easiest thing to say about positioning is, hey, right here, Tony here, Jade here, facing the way that I'm facing. Looking out, so that they have a really good understanding of exactly where I want them to start with. So this place has a great kind of simplicity to it, and so I want to match the pose to that. The real trick with doing the Brenizer Method is there are ways of doing it with action, but obviously it's a little bit tricky. Especially if you want to really get a great depth of field, you need poses that people can hold a little bit. So this isn't about running and jumping and being crazy. It's about things that have a little bit of stillness, but you still want to have that emotion come through and the beauty of it. So for here, one of the things that's going to work nicely is to start getting you guys nice and simple and open to the camera. So you're going to be here, facing this way. apart enough, just enough so that you can hold hands, and looking out so that you're right on this center line here. So I'm going to get you guys into position, letting them know just like a little bit enough of what I'm going for. And now often, like my clients have, again, I don't come into client meetings and be like, hey buddy, I've got a method, right? So that's not important. What's important is the photo that we end up with. So I want to let them know just enough to kind of know what the heck I'm up to, that we're on the same page. So I say, guys, so what we're going to do here is I'm going to get you in a pose that you can hold for just a few seconds. Now it's not a long exposure or anything. You don't have to like freeze, hold it, but once we get it perfect, just don't sway, don't move around. You guys are already, you've started with perfection. We've got a little bit of this foreground here, and I'm seeing exactly what I want with the perspective line. So I'm shooting with an 85-1.4, and one single frame of that is going to be just like the two of them are going to exactly fill the frame. They are 98% of the frame right now, but I've got all of them in one frame. Now that comes from, and one of the reasons I like shooting with primes is that I've taken hundreds of thousands of photos with the 85. I knew just from being here that I would exactly fill the frame with them and no more. Because with a prime, I automatically know I don't have to look through the camera to set up the shot, because I've used this lens so much I know where the frame is. So the reason that I want them all in one frame is it makes my life a lot easier, because when you're stitching a bunch of things together, you're relying on a bunch of software and algorithms, and it doesn't always get it exactly right. So if there is little stitching error, I'd rather have it be somewhere else than on them. And if it does happen to be on them, then at least I've got this one perfect frame where everything worked out, and I can layer that back on at the end. So Jade, you just have one flyaway. Again, we're mirroring, so so mirror me, so just on your right side up here. Perfect. Awesome. I mean, it's all part of the ambiance. So what I'm doing here, awesome. So I've got them in one frame, nice little smile, Tony. And now, so I can also get a few of them here, and then I can later just take the best expression. So that one, she had great expression, a little flow in the dress. And now I've already told myself exactly where I want the edges to be. So I'm shooting toward that. Now I'm going across the top. I'm getting the right side. And I'm being very methodical and getting the bottom. So there's no, you can go all the way across and over. Again, you want to start with the most important frame, especially if you're shooting people with it. In the end, it's kind of strange that a panorama technique is primarily used on people, which aren't a natural subject for panoramas. And the way to make it work, start on what's going to be moving, and especially start on the important subjects, because you don't want people won't notice as much if there's a stitching error on a leaf over there, but they're going to notice if there's a stitching error on their face, right? So we want to start with that. We want to make sure that's perfect. That also allowed me to shoot a couple different frames of them, so that now I can use whatever one had the best expression, and we're gonna stitch it all through in software later.
First, inspire us. Okay. Where did photography start in your life?
Well, I think, again, like for most people, it starts with a little seed, but so I can talk. My father was a avid camera collector, and sort of he was a gadget maven before they even really had those. I mean, he had a tablet in 1984. I still don't have one, right? And so I'd see these, and so my first camera was one of his, Minolta SRT 101B, manual everything, total
right.
metal. You could bash it with a hammer, and it worked better than before. But it really started, I mean, for me, I came up through photojournalism, and there was something about the instant feedback and just the ability to tell a very quick story and have this instant feedback of digital that helped me sort of explode both in terms of interest and in terms of growing my work in kind of a feedback loop. So I switched to digital very early, like 2000. And back when you were kind of crazy to do so, and starting with like the D1 or even the really pixelated cameras before that.
Right.
But first of all, just being able to see the work, as you shot, put it up on have things that were like you would have start the day with a blank page because I was in journalism at the time. I was a writer.
But tell me about that though.
Yeah.
Why journalism? You wanted that instant feedback, or did you enjoy the story? Why journalism?
Well, I have a very short attention span. Really, I mean, I think your personality defines what you end up going into and what you end up working. There's a reason that I don't write novels. There's a reason that I don't shoot wildlife or product photography, because those require a certain kind of personality of really drilling down and focusing on the same thing over and over. Whereas for me, I always want to kind of make sense out of chaos. I want to start the day having no idea what I'm going to do, like now, and end up with a product that people are enjoying. So with journalism, you start every morning in a daily newspaper with a blank page. I was a newspaper editor, and you've got to just come up with everything on it. At a small paper, you kind of have to do everything. So I did the writing, the design, and the photography.
Wow.
And so that's what got me into it in a real professional level very early on. And I kind of stumbled through some very lucky breaks, and all I managed to do, to my credit, was to realize, like, oh, these doors are opening, I should take a running leap through them. So I am I'm not from these wide open spaces. I'm from Manhattan, where everything's really cramped, and B, we don't have a lot of time. People are always moving from place to place. So I've actually found a place that's nice and cramped and with low light, and so we're going to kind of simulate what to do if you can hear the bottling and everything that's going on. So we want to get in, we want to get out, we want to quickly take some really nice photos. So one of the things that I do if I'm working really fast and in these darker spaces is I like to use continuous lighting setups. So for example, here's one of mine, an icon panel that actually changes light temperature. You can tell I've beaten it up a lot. But the reason I do this, the main reason is I can very quickly see exactly what I'm going to get. I can very quickly see exactly where the shadow's falling on the face, and I can quickly see how the intensity of it is relating to the intensity of the light in the scene, because all I have to do is use my eyes, as opposed to using flash where you try to balance everything out, where it goes off at 1/100,000th of a second, and you have to chimp through, look through, and figure it out. All I have to do if I'm using continuous lighting is just look at it, and then if I know how the camera translates tonality, contrast, then I can instantly say, okay, this is going to look great. Let me take a photo.
for Clinton was your big break. That was the first door opening for you.
It was the first one. There's been a series. Again, at that time, I was just out of college, and working with new equipment, and so, I mean, you can picture the scene. Literally, here I am. I'm in a van. I'm on the way to be the pool photographer for a number of newspapers,
right,
to photograph the president and his family when Hillary was running for Senate. And I'm spending most of the time on the way over trying to figure out how to turn the camera on. Right. So this is not. Now I consider myself a very technical photographer. Certainly not at that time.
But now you look back and you think, what was I thinking, or what were you thinking?
I mean, I'm proud of it in a different way because I, even though I hadn't had the opportunity to learn a lot about the technical side of photography, at that time I had the tenacity of a reporter. And so I actually won a statewide award because I managed to get into places that the other press photographers couldn't. So even starting out as a photojournalist and through work for Columbia, the things that had always really interested me was being a storyteller and telling these and telling stories about people and the way in which they relate to each other. And at first, when you start in wedding photography, again, even not that long ago, wedding photography was kind of the redheaded stepchild of the industry. Mm-hmm. You would look at it and you would picture the guy with like the potato masher flash telling, turn and smile for the camera, and everything's just, the execution at dawn style, turn in a line photography. But I started to see with the WPJA and other sites that there had started to be a market for people using real documentary skills on the wedding day, and so first I just thought of it as like here's just another market, another place to do what I like to do. Sure. But I realized, and this is something I realize more all the time, is that there are things about weddings that really make it easier to tell a really, really great full story. So first of all, if you're shooting for a publication, if you're shooting for like a magazine feature, Newsweek, New York Times, in the end you're taking hundreds and hundreds and thousands of photos, but in your head, it's all about one photo or all about 5 photos. What is the shot that tells the story? Right. What is this little spread that's going to tell that story? Huh. Whereas with weddings, the product that I'm delivering is hundreds and hundreds of photos, and they all matter. So, I mean, it's really one of I can't think of another kind of photography where it really matters so much what your 500th best photo that day was. Huh. And so, it's a different kind of skill set, but it also really allows you to tell a huge comprehensive story. You can walk in and tell the artistic story, the story of beauty, the story of fun, traditional, less traditional, and do it all at once, and they all matter. And you can put them together into different ways.
Well, here's what I find interesting, though. With photojournalism or weddings, regardless of what the story it is that you're trying to tell, you have spur-of-the-moment moments that you have to capture. Right. You have bad lighting. You have ugly locations. Yeah. So do you see similarities with both of the things that you're trying to do here with photojournalism and weddings?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in these kind of situations, and I kind of take the spirit of a photojournalist. I mean, which isn't the only way to do it. I mean, some people are more okay. We're going to come in and we're going to make this, and I'll work with you. We'll make sure we're shooting in good light, in good locations. My thing is like the day is not about me. Right. I'm there to capture what happens and tell that story, but whatever's going to work best for you, and I can use my expertise to say this might make your life more easier, less stressful, but if they have preferences, I'm going to work with it no matter what the light is, no matter what the location is, and especially being in New York, we're working in a lot of shoeboxes, a lot of difficult lighting. We don't have the luxury of these beautiful vineyards, but the difference is that you have to turn out a lot of great work, or a lot of work that at least is very good. Whereas in photojournalism, you can say this isn't working, and that's okay. I'm going to go and tell a different story. I'm going to go somewhere else. But you can't walk in to a wedding and say, wow, the light in the ceremony is not good at all, so I'm just going to go shoot the reception, right? So you have to have, a set of skills that say, I'm always going to make this work somehow. And I've seen that actually, with photojournalists that I've worked with. There's just a different sort of attitude where I have to say to them, like, your back is always against the wall in wedding photography. You can never say, sorry guys, ceremony just didn't kind of turn out,
So is it more difficult then? Is wedding photography more difficult than what you did?
I mean, it has a higher base of difficulty. Like, it's never going to be easy to do even fairly well. It's always going to be a long day, hard work, things like that. But in any kind of photography you do is going to be as difficult as you make it for yourself. And I think it should be difficult, right? Because if for example, if every photo you take comes out pretty good, then that's a sign that you're never pushing yourself. Like, if you're never taking a photo that's just terrible, it means that you haven't gone just a little bit beyond your own envelope. So whether you're spending all day shooting a watch, right? Like, you can figure out ways to say, how can I make this hard? How can I? Because that's when you start to grow.
What if you have the worst scenario of beautiful places, like a dumpster, or for instance, a tractor?
Right.
What do you do?
Well, this actually reminds me a lot of New Jersey, which I shoot a lot in, and so obviously one of the ways you can go with this is to just kind of be silly and say, like, oh, hey, get on the tractor and things like that, and that can be fun, and
just
for the
location.
The right kind of client, can have fun with that. But let's say you don't have the right kind of client. You don't have somebody that's like, okay, let's do that. No, they just want beautiful photos, and for whatever reason, you don't have a beautiful location. So the right thing to do is again to see it with different sorts of eyes. Like, how can I transform this? And so the first thing is that anything outside the frame of a photo doesn't exist. That's the wonderful thing about the photography being a great liar. And then you start thinking about, okay, how is this going to work with different kinds of depth of field? How is this going to work particularly with different kinds of lighting? Can I use light and cropping to get rid of the stuff that I don't want and maybe add some new stuff that will look nice and dramatic? Yeah, we've got some great subjects, so we're halfway there. But what we're going to do is we're going to work with, since these are fashionable people, and we're going to use light and posing to make this as good as we can. Now, the natural light that's here is nothing. It's it's good for just making things look okay, but it's never going to look dramatic because there's just clouds everywhere. So we're going to add our own drama. So what we're going to do, like we did before, very simply, where we had the light in the frame and then we're going to take it out later, now we're going to be a little bit more complicated. Because compositing like that is something that's very, very common with commercial campaigns, with advertisements, where you see a bunch of celebrities and they all look fantastic and they all have great lighting on them and everything's perfect. It's because they're cheating. They're shooting them all separately. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually shoot them separately, get a perfect light on them, which is going to get us 90% of the way there, because by having the light on them, everything else kind of drops down. We're not seeing so much of this terrible white background. It looks like we meant to do it. It means to be industrial because we've got this dramatic lighting. And then, so what I'm going to have you actually splash some light on the backdrop. So up a little higher, yeah, excellent.
So something that's interesting about you is B&H, who's a sponsor of ours, they featured you, and you're featured at WPPI, and you're in the speaking circuit because people adore your work. You're talented.
Wow.
But guess what? You're shooting 60 to 70 weddings a year?
Right. Yeah, I shot 71 last year.
And how many this week?
Well, a few this week I'm here, but so just 2. But I did last week. I did 5 and 6 days.
Wow.
So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and those were all full weddings. For me, again, I love teaching. I come from a background. My mother was a teacher. My father, my stepfather, my brother, my sister, and so I'm really happy to be out there and sharing. But the thing that primarily drives me, these days is shooting. And so I structure my entire business so that I can shoot as much as possible. And so a lot of people at this stage, it's very rare, to have somebody, whether they're speaking or not, to be, shooting high-end weddings, to not be, very low price, and to be doing 70 weddings.
It's incredible.
And the reason a lot of people at that stage who are getting that many inquiries would say, well, now I've got to hire other photographers. But for me, that means less of what I love, which is shooting, and more of what I hate, which is paperwork.
Right.
So I hire people to do everything else that's not shooting.
Brilliant.
and I focus on what I love. If it was just shooting weddings and nothing else, I could do 100 a year and be fine. When I think about it, my grandfather was a coal miner.
100 a year.
Yeah, if it's just the 12-hour days of shooting. Like, my grandfather was a coal miner. And sometimes I pictured him, when people say, like, yeah, you're one of the hardest working people in the industry, and oh my God, how do you do 70 weddings? I pictured him saying, wow, you had to go to 70 parties a year? Like, boy, that's really tough compared to working in a coal mine.
Right. Wow.
And so, yeah, I try not to take myself too seriously. But again, it's all the other stuff. It's, it's the customer service. It's, things like that, and that can drain people.
Definitely.
And so we want to maintain a really, really high level of customer service just to run a good business, but also because to get these really good photos that show people's personality is about them being comfortable. And so much of that work that we do to make people comfortable happens long before the wedding.
Before the wedding,
And so I actually have somebody who's full-time, who's not, like, it's important, she's not a photographer. It's important that she's not, working all weekend, because then she can be there for customers, all week. And to just answer their questions, to just make them feel comfortable, to make sure that they know they're in good hands. And so, we divvy up the labor a lot that way. And that allows me to do, again, the things that really work for me as a photographer. And so, will I be doing 70 weddings every year for the rest of my life? No. But it gives me a really great base, and it's what I'm happy to do now. And
are you enjoying what you're doing?
I love it more than ever.
Do you?
Yeah, because, again, and this kind of deepens the last question. There's just things about weddings where, in any other kind of photography, it's so difficult to get behind people's facades, right? If you're doing a long-form documentary, it takes you so long to get people to forget that you're in a room with a camera. If you're just there saying, I'm documenting the American family. But on a wedding, because everyone knows I'm supposed to be there, and I'm acting like I'm supposed to be there, and they have so much else to think about, within 10 minutes, they don't care that I'm there.
That's right.
And so like, if you think about, for example, these days in America, if I said, I'm going to go on the street, oh my gosh, there's this child, he's doing this really interesting thing that would make a great photograph. I'm going to take some great photos of this strange child. Like, the police would be there within 10 minutes. Like, we're so distrustful of people.
Right.
But on a wedding day, I can shoot kids doing these awesome things, and these great stories all day, and people not only do they don't care, we're all on the same team, which is another thing I love about wedding photography compared to editorial photography. I like making work with people and of people. like working with them to kind of create art instead of making work out of people, which I sometimes think, sometimes editorial photography is about that, because the person in front of you isn't your client. Sometimes street photography can be about that, where you're saying, oh, you're an interesting geometrical form, but I don't care who you are. If the people in front of my camera are my clients, or the people that my clients love and care about, there's a real feeling of connection already that just instantly allows me to get in. I do feel like I'm documenting all these different American families,
Very cool.
and that's sort of my
in New York,
long-term
you
work.
probably get a lot of different families.
A lot of different kinds, again, and now I've done more than 250 weddings. So especially in New York, I've done every kind.
Every type of wedding.
My last client meeting, they came in and they're like, well, it's a little bit different, I'm Albanian, and I'm like, okay, great. Let me tell you about the Albanian weddings I've done, right? Or the Basque weddings I've done.
Wow.
Like, whatever kind of culture, I feel like you become an expert in that as well as in the photography side.
Well, tell me this. Do clients see your editorial work? Do they see the pictures
Yeah.
of Muhammad Ali and the Pope and Obama and say, wow,
Yeah.
I want this dude to take my wedding? I mean, does that help your business? Does that help your clientele for them to see your past work?
It does help in a certain way. I mean, it's funny. There's a lot of stuff that we'll be talking about today, and that other photographers care about, that the average client doesn't care about at all. I don't say, hey, I've got a method, named after me. Like they're just like, well, is the photo nice or not? But they do like, where I've been as a photographer. They like my story, and it shows. I mean, having worked in the art direction world, basically, you're working for people who, unlike wedding clients, they have to keep hiring you back, right? So if art directors like you, it means you actually do a good job, and they know that, and you work as a professional.
That's a really good point.
And so people do respond well to that, but I don't want the kind of clients that would only hire me because I photographed three presidents.
Because of who you've shot.
Right.
Yeah.
I want people to then say, well, that's interesting, but what I really respond to is the way in which you capture weddings, and that's what I want
The
for my day.
emotion, the story, everything.
Right. My name is Ryan Brenizer. I have all sorts of methods, and I've just been framed.
Frame Season 3 was brought to you by Bay Photo Lab. Like the music? Special thanks to Triple Scoop Music. Frame Network giveaways are brought to you by B&H. Head to giveaways.framenetwork.com for your chance to win. Find out more about the equipment used in this episode on framenetwork.com.